Week 11 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire this week. So not a great week on the waiver wire besides Audric Estime, we're going to talk about in a minute. It's pretty much handcuffs and backup running backs on this list. The first back, Audric Estime of the Denver Broncos. Early in the season, he was starting to eat into the workload in the backfield of Denver. Then he got hurt early in the season, week 4 at the Jets. He was out a couple weeks. But now the last couple weeks, it's starting to ramp up the touches for Estime. In week 10, obviously, he was the leader in the backfield. 14 carries, 53 yards in that ball game. So it was a close game throughout between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos in last week's game. And Estime, like I said, he out-touched Javonte Williams by a whole lot in that game, 14-3, including receptions. And also, Jaleel McLaughlin, he's nothing more than a backup and a change of pace downs back as well for this Denver Bronco team. So it looks like Estime might be the running back over there in Denver. And like I said, he's a rookie. He's a guy that Sean Payton likes since training camp. And he's available right now 97% of fantasy league. It's surprising a little bit this part of the season to see a player jump over 2 running backs on the depth chart and take over the starting job. But like I said, with Javonte Williams only getting 1 carry in that game and Estime getting 14, and it was a close game throughout, and McLaughlin not really doing much. He looks like the starting running back to me for this Denver Bronco team. He's a rookie that's been in the playbook a little bit over the last few weeks, and he's got a good matchup coming up versus the Atlanta Falcons. Estime easily going to be the top pickup off the wire at the running back position, and right now he's available in 97% of fantasy leagues. Next running back, Tyler Algier of the Atlanta Falcons. Algier, he's been on this list a whole lot this season, and we know he's one of the better handcuffs backup backs in all pro football is Tyler Algier. So he got stuffed at the goal line in that game with New Orleans, where he would have had a pretty productive ball game with about 12 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So the last few games for Algier, week 8 at Tampa, 12 carries, 33 yards. Week 9 versus the Cowboys, 6 carries, 18 yards, a touchdown. Week 10 in New Orleans, 11 carries, 59 yards. And like I said, he got stuffed a few times at the goal line. So Algier, he's out there in 57% of fantasy leagues. And if Bijan Robinson ever went down, Algier, he would be a top 15-20 option weekly for fantasy owners. So as a handcuffed and a depth piece, I think he's a decent add this week. Next back, Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. Tyjae Spears, he's out there in 54% of fantasy leagues. Tony Pollard, he got nicked up a little bit in that game at the Los Angeles Chargers, but Tony Pollard, he should be good to go. Obviously, he played most of that game, but Tyjae Spears, we know, is a better receiving back out of the backfield than Tony Pollard. And last season, we also saw Spears play a great role with Derrick Henry even there in Tennessee. So Spears, after he missed the last 3 games with injury, he returned and he had a decent game, 7 carries, 47 yards, 3 catches, 4 yards. So this Tennessee Titan team, one of the worst teams in the league, obviously, 2-7 on the season, is this Tennessee Titan team. And they're going to be trailing early and often a lot in these ball games. So I think Tyjae Spears, he's going to play a role as the season goes on. Tony Pollard's still obviously going to be the number 1 back, but in terms of passing downs and when they're down on third downs as well, Tyjae Spears is going to be in there a lot. So right now, well, he's out there in 54% of fantasy leagues, and we've seen what Spears has done throughout his career, especially last season. I think he's a decent add in those 12-team leagues. A deeper next back, Gus Edwards of Los Angeles Chargers. So he returned from injury as well, Edwards, and we know he's not a receiving back out of the backfield, but a guy to get 10, 12 touches per game and some goal line and short yardage work. We know that's what Gus Edwards is good for. Same as week 10 return, 10 carries, 55 yards in that one in the easy victory over the Tennessee Titans for this Los Angeles Charger team, where J.K. Dobbins had 15 carries, 50 yards, and 3 catches, 5 yards. So 18-10, he out-touched them total in that ball game. I still think Dobbins is the back to own over there for this Los Angeles Charger team. But also, we know with Dobbins' injury concern, he could go down quickly, and Gus Edwards could step right into the starter's role once again for this Charger team. So right now, well, he's back, and he looked good in his return as Edwards. He's out there in 83% of fantasy leagues. And the final running backs, Cam Akers, the Minnesota Vikings. So Cam Akers, he got a lot of work in that game. Aaron Jones, he got banged up, but returned fortunately for this Minnesota Viking team and fantasy owners. So Cam Akers, they traded for him a few weeks ago. Akers was there last season as well with Minnesota, and then in the offseason, he went to the Houston Texans and now back to the Minnesota Vikings in a deal. So the last couple weeks, he's actually gotten some work. Week 9 versus Indianapolis, 6 carries, 46 yards, 2 catches, 7 yards. And 10 in Jacksonville, 13 carries, 38 yards to catch 9 yards. So like I said, Cam Akers is getting work. I know Jones, he missed the majority of the third quarter in that ball game at Jacksonville. But Akers, he showed some flash, and week 9 as well in limited touches, he had a decent ball game. So right now, while he's out there, still in tons of fantasy leagues at 86%, and we know Aaron Jones is still one of the more injury-prone running backs in the league. I think it's a good flyer to have Akers off the wire this week, so that's a few running backs I looked at off the wire. Week 11 of the fantasy football season.